Hi everyone! It is June, and June is my anniversary month, so I thought it would be fun to talk about how my husband and I met and got to know each other and got married. So I was 20 when we met, and at that stage of life, I had a lot of people trying to hook me up with their friend or somebody they knew or a cousin or their son's friend. And I was just kind of like, at that point, I was just like, I roll. If any lady told me, I have a guy that's perfect for you. And I had never dated before. I figured, why would I date a guy if I wouldn't consider marrying him? And I had a big laundry list of exactly what I wanted in a guy that I would marry. And at that point in my life, I was happy. I was busy. I was always working, and I really enjoyed life. And I did want to meet somebody eventually, but I was busy, and I really didn't mind being single. I was having a lot of fun in life, serving God and just traveling a lot. And so it didn't really bother me very much that I didn't have a boyfriend. It bothered a lot of other people, but it didn't seem to bother me very much. And there was this one lady in particular who was so persistent. She went to my church and she would tell me all about her nephew and how wonderful he was and how he was just the sweetest and so handsome and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I really didn't care. I didn't really think much about it because there were so many other ladies doing the exact same thing to me. I was kind of like, okay, lady, take a number. And but I was nice. I wanted to be polite when she would talk about him. And then one day she brought his picture to church and she was like, "Look, you have to see he's not dog ugly. You know, you might like him." And I was like, "Okay." And then she would go on talking about him. And then one Sunday she told me, "Hey, I told him about you and he wants to meet you." And that kind of got my heart racing a little bit. I was like, oh no, lady. People had talked to me before about hooking me up with guys, but they had never actually materialized. And I was just kind of, I didn't know what to do. So I just told her, hey, you know, if he wants to come to church, that's fine. Easter's a good time to do it. But I was not trying to encourage her. I just didn't know what to say. And I didn't want to be impolite, so I was just like, fine, bring him to church. So Easter Sunday came around, and this lady, who sits all the way in the back, is sitting up front right where I normally sit. Like right behind where I always sit, she's sitting with a guy next to her. And my heart about stopped and I almost hyperventilated. I was like, oh no! She brought the boy with her! And I went and I sat down and I tried to ignore them for as long as I possibly could without being rude. And then finally I was like, because I knew she was getting my attention or trying to, anyways. So I turned around and I was polite and I tried to hide my horror at the fact that she had brought the boy with her. And I said hello and I met Ben. And I was freaked out because I had never dated before. And that was actually something that really scared me too. I didn't know how to be myself and be truly open with a guy. I just wanted to be nice but keep them an arm's length away, you know, so I didn't get any emotional involvement, just try to keep them away. And so after the service, I thought, you know, I can run out and they will never catch me because there's so many people. But I thought, well, I'll try to be polite. So I went over to, you know, just be like, well, how did you like the service? And this lady starts, you know, trying to get us to hook up and asks if we want to exchange numbers. I about died. I wanted to just melt into a puddle and crawl under the pew. I was so embarrassed and I didn't know what to say. And I talk a lot, so normally I'd come up with something to say. But I had no idea what to say. And I was just like, can we maybe start with being friends? that was the best thing I could come up with. And this nice, sweet guy was just like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, whew, I have scared him off for sure. And I was pretty sure that he would never come back. I remember that was just, it was awkward. And I was like, well, never see him again. Well, 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Sunday school, and I happened to look around, and I noticed that boy was back. And he was sitting in my Sunday school class. And I was like, what do I do? And I was going to ignore him. And then I felt really bad for him because I was like, well, there's a lot of people in this church. He doesn't know anybody, and he kind of knows who I am. So I was like, oh. Plus he was sitting in the back next to the door, and I figured I probably couldn't get out without him seeing me. So I was like, okay, fine. So I said, hey, how are you doing after Sunday school was finished? And talked to him a little bit, and he said, my aunt told me that she was going to meet me here, but I didn't see her, and she hasn't answered her phone. And I was like, I'm going to be nice again, because I felt sorry for him. And I was like, well, if your aunt doesn't show up, you can sit with me. Well, his aunt did show up, and he still sat with me. And I remember after that, after the service, we actually did talk without his aunt there. And I was impressed with just how calm and gentle and sweet he was. And I was like, okay, I wouldn't mind talking to him again. So I invited him back that Sunday night. I was in a play, and I invited him to come see it. And he asked for my number that night. And I thought, well, if he's asking for it, okay, I'll give him my number. So I gave him my number, and then later I told my dad, because I told my dad everything. We're really close, and my dad gives me advice on what to do about guys. So I told my dad all about Ben, and my dad told me to give Ben his number. So I texted Ben my dad's number and was like, hey, my dad wants you to have his number. Poor guy, he was probably so nervous. So over the next few weeks, Ben would message me, and I would message him occasionally. It wasn't like a daily thing. It was just occasional. And then he came to church a few times, and one Sunday night, he asked me, hey, what would you think about meeting someplace besides church? And never having dated before, I was just like, what do you mean? Because I was always at church. So I was like, what do you mean? I'm always here. Why would you see me anywhere else besides here? And he was like, well, what would you think about going out for coffee? And I love coffee. So I was like, oh man, that's hard to say no to. And I was like, oh man, that sounds like a date. I was just thinking, ooh. So I was like, you know what? Let me talk to my dad about that. I didn't even say like maybe or yes. I was like, I need to talk to my dad about that. And I just remember his response. I was just very impressed with it. He was like, you know what? Whatever you and your dad decide, I respect. You talk about it and just let me know. So I went home and I was like, Dad, this guy invited me out for coffee. What should I do? And I expected my dad to, go on and on about why maybe I shouldn't. But he asked me, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, I mean, he seems really nice. And I feel pretty comfortable around him, which I wasn't around all guys. I wasn't always comfortable. And if you have seen the video of my testimony, you'll understand why I say that. And I was very taken aback that my dad just said, well, hey, if you feel comfortable with it, then okay. So I was like, all right. And I told Ben, we can go ahead and get together. And I was so nervous. I thought about canceling so many times because I thought it would be nice, but then I was deathly afraid because I had never, ever gone out on an actual date. So I wouldn't call it a date. I just said it was two people meeting for coffee. This is not a date. It was a date. So we met at Panera. That was the place we went, and we just had coffee because eating in front of a total stranger is awkward. So we had coffee and we talked, and we were actually there for quite a few hours. And we didn't know each other very well, and I talk a lot and Ben does not. And so I was just kind of like trying to fill the empty, quiet space with talking. But one thing that we did have in common was our love for the Lord. And that was really neat to me, just the fact that we talked about the Bible and different things in it and what God was doing in our life. And I thought, that's the kind of guy I want. I want somebody who I could talk to about what God is doing in my life, to talk to about how God is changing me and making me more like Him. And it was just really neat. And I went away thinking, wasn't that bad. And over the course of a few months, we met. We didn't go out on dates. We met for coffee quite a few times until I started realizing, oh my goodness, I think that I could possibly like this guy. But I kept on telling myself, no, you can't like him. Because I was so scared, and that was something that scared me so bad. But God really worked in so many ways in both of our lives, just bringing us together in the right timing and the right way. It is just so amazing. And in my next video, I'm going to share how we started dating and how I put Ben through so much. And I'm so glad that he's such a patient person and stuck around for long enough to realize that I wasn't a complete cray-cray. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed my crazy story, and I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless.